The sales order module of CenterPoint allows you to enter in a sales order using one of two screens. There's a screen that actually has multi-tabs to enter in the order, and there is also a quick entry screen, which is a consolidated entry screen. The sales order screen that has multiple tabs is the original sales order screen and has been in the module since the inception of the module. The quick entry screen was added at a later time. We are going to be talking about the sales order quick entry screen in this video. If you have sales orders installed, then likely on your quick list you have a section called sales, and underneath there you have an option for sales order. However, when I go ahead and click on that sales order, you notice that it takes me to the screen, which is a multi-tab screen. So if I were to select a customer here, let's say Red Wing Bike Club, all of the basic information would be entered in on this tab, including choosing which billing address and which shipping address, and changing things like which tax state or which sales tax needs to be calculated. And then on the order tab is where we would go ahead and put in all of the items that were being entered on this sales order. Okay. If you want to get to the consolidated sales order screen, we need to go to Processes, Sales, and then Sales Order, Sales Order Quick Entry. Okay, now we could add the quick entry to our quick list. If you don't have it on your quick list and you want to wind up adding it there, you can right click on the quick list and go to Manage Items. You can open up Processes, Sales, and then click on the, not the customer invoice, but the sales order quick entry, and then click Add. And then that'll put the sales order quick entry screen on here, as well as the sales order one. If you want to get rid of one or the other, you just have to right click on it and remove it from that list. Likely you'll be using one or the other. You probably won't likely be using both of them at the same time. And the sales order quick entry screen, we're going to start out with our company, and then I could go ahead and choose my customer. Now, if you remember when I was on that other screen, as soon as I chose a customer, it filled in a business address or a billing address and a shipping address for that customer, and I don't see those anywhere on this screen. That's what the button next to the customer name is for. So right there next to that customer name is where we could go ahead and click on that, or hit enter on it if I've tabbed to that field, and go ahead and choose a different billing address and or shipping address for that customer if I happen to have more than one, and then also override the sales tax. From there then, next to that is another button, which is actually going to allow us to enter in notes for this particular customer. So it's bringing up notes that are already on this customer's record. If I wanted to add to the notes, I could either just begin typing, or I could add a timestamp and then go ahead and type in additional notes on that customer. And then those would become part of that customer's record. Now, sometimes you want those notes to actually print on your forms, either print on your sales order or print on your invoices. So we can go ahead and make sure that that prints on the customer invoice or the sales order by changing something in the customer setup. So I'm going to actually right click on this customer and edit the customer. And right here on the customer setup screen, there is a checkbox on the bottom left-hand side of the screen to print notes on forms. If that isn't checked, then those notes will never print on any of the forms for that customer. And then the other thing that would need to be done is underneath the invoice designer, you would need to make sure that you added notes somewhere to the form. Okay, from there then we can go ahead and enter this in as either an order or a quote. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and choose to enter it in as a sales order. And there is a sequence for the sales orders that starts with 0 and then increments from there. I'm going to go ahead and we'll just say that this is sales order number 1. We'll just change it to 1. And then it's going to go ahead and put in my date. If I have a customer PO number, I could go ahead and enter in that customer PO number. It'll show any customer balance up here in the top right, and it'll default any terms that you've set up on that customer to the terms field there. We can still go ahead and override those terms by selecting new terms over here, or creating a new term by clicking on the new button. I'm going to keep the terms that were already assigned to that customer. You have a place to put in a date required and then the earliest date you want to receive delivery of that particular, or they want to receive delivery of that particular item. So I could go here and say that the date that it's required is 10/31 of 2019. The earliest date is 10/20 of 2019. If there was a salesperson that is attached to this order, and especially if you're calculating any commissions, you can go ahead and select the sales order here. Now, if I had assigned a salesperson by default to the customer in the customer record, that would have been filled in already. From there, then I'm ready to enter in any items that are being ordered on this particular sales order. So I can go over here and say that they've ordered an economy bike package from us, and they ordered 5 of them, and we haven't shipped any yet. And the price that we are selling them to at, or the price that the orders them for, is $99. Now, all of the other pieces of information that we see on this grid, such as the description of the item, well, that came from the item setup, and the additional description field came from the item setup. However, this will also print on the sales order, so if I wanted to, I could go in and edit and make any changes to that additional description so that it would have any additional information I wanted to include there. I have a place here where I could choose different items that we could substitute it for. If I had the inventory module, I could keep track of different items that we were substituting for this. I happen to not have the inventory module installed right now. I could put in comments on each one of these lines. So there's a place where I could put in any line comments. And I could even change the price level. Okay, right now I'm only using one price level, but if this customer was defaulted to price level 2 and I decided to sell this to them at price level, if they were defaulted to price level 1 and I decided to sell it to them at price level 2, I could change which price level right here that I'm using for this particular transaction. I could also right click and add remove and add any columns or take away any columns I want to see or don't want to see. For example, if I'm trying to track all of my revenue and expenses to a profit center and a location, I could add those fields of information to this grid over here. Likewise, if I only am using one price level and I know I'm never going to change that price level for an item, I could right click, add remove, and I could take that actually off of the grid. So you have the ability to go ahead and add and take off any fields that you either want to see or don't want to see on this grid. Okay, you also can choose the order in which they appear from left to right. So the order from top to bottom here is the same order that those fields will appear from left to right. So you could either move them up or down on the list using the arrow keys over here. So for example, if I wanted substitutes to be the last thing, I could go ahead and move substitutes to the very end down here somewhere, and then click OK. And then of course, it's going to wind up being the last field on the list over there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and enter in another line here, and this is going to be for a standard bike package that they also purchased from us, and that is going to be that they purchased, or that they're purchasing 3, or they're putting in a sales order for 3 of them. Okay, so down below, you're going to see that for each one of these lines, it also is taking and shadowing another line down here in this extra information box. So I could decide on some extra information that I want to see about this item that I don't necessarily need to see up here, but I might like to see here. So especially if I was using inventory, it might be nice to see how many of this item do we have on hand? How many are available? How many are on order? Is there a vendor part number? So I could right click on this grid down here, go to add remove, and I get to choose which pieces of information I want to add to this extra information grid. Now, if you don't think you're going to be using that extra information grid for anything, you could also choose to turn it off by going down here to options and saying that you don't want to show that extra information grid. Okay, so that toggles it on and off. No entry is made in the additional info grid. It is just simply displaying information about the item that you're highlighted on. Below that then is a memos comments button where we could enter in any memos that are going to be printed on the sales order. And if we wanted to put any comments in on this transaction, or if we had additional custom fields that we had set up under preferences for information that we additionally wanted to record on this sales order, we could be entering those in down here in the custom fields. I haven't set any custom fields up for my particular database. I'm going to click OK there. From there, then we could go ahead and specify a shipping method and FOB. Then we could go ahead and put in what we think any freight charges might be. So if I said that freight charges would be $125, we could also change that when it becomes an invoice. So if we need to change what that is, that's okay. What account is that going to? Down here at the bottom is a button that says accounts. And when we set up our preferences, we go ahead and set up preferences for sales orders for default accounts. So we can see here that freight is going to this freight income account. Okay, now for that freight income, if we also want to take and put that income to some sort of a profit center and a location, I could click on the freight button here and it would allow me to come in here and say, well, that's going to be for the profit center of biking equipment, and this is for the Minnesota store, for example, and then click OK. And then when that invoice is created, it will keep that same distribution unless I change it, and then it'll wind up distributing that freight using the profit center of equipment and the location of the Minnesota store. Okay, I can also override any sales tax that got calculated here. If I click on the button, it would allow me to change the sales tax, or it allows me to override or adjust the amount that got calculated. I could also enter in any miscellaneous charges. And if I wanted to take and automatically apply some sort of a deposit to this, I could go ahead, and if I had customer deposits for this customer, they would be listed down here at the bottom, and I could choose which deposits I wanted to apply to this invoice. Okay. I also have the ability to put this, it's actually not this invoice, this sales order. I also have the ability to place this on hold so that it would not come up on the edit and fill screen to fill these sales orders. So I could go ahead and place it on hold if I wanted to while I was creating it. And the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, you'll see that it is marked to go ahead and print this sales order when I click save. The reason why that box is checked by default has to go with the setup of your customer. So if I right-click on the customer again and go in and edit them, there is an email and print tab on the setup of a customer. And down here at the bottom, we have it defaulted to say that we by default want to print our sales orders. So therefore, it has already marked the box to print it by default. Okay, the same thing would happen for the email if when I right-click over here and edit the customer, if on the email print tab up at the top, if I had said yes to emailing sales orders, if I went ahead and said yes here and made that name be the send to, then this box here would also be check marked to go ahead and email this out when I hit save here. Okay, I still have the ability to click on here and override any email addresses, put in a subject line or in a message. Now, in preferences, you have the ability to set up a default message in subject line. So this would allow me to override those or to add to them. And then down here at the bottom, it's going to allow me to choose which form I want to attach to that email. So that's all I need for going ahead and entering in the sales order. So all I need to do is go ahead and click save here. And then that is our sales order quick entry.